Hello, my name is Michael Walker, Deputy Lifestyle Editor at The Link, and I'm here with Ben Curtis, Level 2 English, here to talk about his suffering with depression at university. So Ben, thank you for coming in.
It's all right.
Why did you consent to this interview then? For instance, what did you hope to get out of it? Did you hope to help people, or?
I'd definitely like to, and so sort of a principle of honesty that I've had anyway, thinking that one of the large things I hate about the whole issue is that people won't talk about it, and that the stigma was going to remain there until people become comfortable with just basically getting it out there.
I mean, there's a lot of stigma around, isn't it? I mean,
there's a huge amount, just mental health in general, that isn't taken seriously enough to the point where people won't discuss it openly. Like, to some extent they will, but yeah, more people coming forward with it and realising it's okay to talk about would be ideal.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Personally, what does depression and anxiety, I mean, they're under the same umbrella of things, you know, all these things. I mean, anxiety goes hand in hand with depression, obviously.
Yeah.
So what would you say?
Can do.
Yeah, so personally, what does it mean to you?
It's a really complicated question, but I would just say something definitely ingrained in my personality, I suppose. I don't think it defines me, but I think my personality is in a way that I can feel it quite a lot. But I think I don't know if I would say I was born with it. I think it's mostly environmental, something that happens like to you. But at the same time, I think my personality was ready to experience that more than other people. As again, it's very hard to explain.
It's all based on experience as well, isn't it? I mean, yeah. I mean, everyone experiences anxiety in some form, but you know. So I mean, obviously we've discussed how depression and anxiety are very sort of hand in hand, sort of two flips of the same coin. I mean, would you say one is worse than the other, or people are affected worse than, you know, anxiety? Or?
I would definitely agree they're interlinked, but I would definitely say they're separate things. And you're right to say that everyone has anxiety to some level. But the issue with anxiety is that you would have a disorder, which would be you'd have too much anxiety and you can't deal with it, or an abnormal amount. But like, yeah, everyone would have anxiety to some extent, whereas I think depression, everyone doesn't have, I don't think, but anyone can, I think. And that's the distinction, that everyone has anxiety, but depression is something you may or may not have.
So you mentioned, I mean, that you didn't say it was ingrained into you, but you said, you know, it's sort of an environmental, you know, symptom almost. I mean, what are your experiences with depression and anxiety? I mean, how did it start?
How it started, I'd say, I can't really make this point very elegantly. I'm trying to think of a good way to say it, but
of course, yeah.
I'd say when I'm around like 8 to 10 years old, I realised today, was that I wouldn't say I had depression at that point, but I was possibly leading up towards having it, and it was like I think a trauma that sort of set it off, and it was like year 7 or 8, just bullied a little bit, and that totally just like threw my world. I think before then I was like a very innocent kid, which I think possibly is why I was sort of set up. I was also a very sensitive kid, so I felt things a lot, and having that, it just went from one place to a completely different place, and then I was still developing as a person at that point. I think habits started to form, and my worldview was still very much forming. So it formed around that whole thing happening, and that totally changed my life, I think.
Would you say that, I mean, you mentioned bullying, I mean, obviously you hear all these stories, you know, about how it can affect people in very, very vast and different ways, and terrible ways. I mean, there's some people who go on to, you know, commit suicide even through these things. I mean, do you think that bullying is one of the main factors, you know, in leading to depression?
I think depression is very unique. I think everyone has a different version of it, and that when you talk about depression as a big thing, you're talking about overlapping similarities, but to tell someone that doesn't have all the symptoms that they don't have it is absurd. Like, I've never been diagnosed clinically, but these are just experiences I've had, and like, I've talked to a lot of people about it, and I can identify with a lot of the symptoms, but I don't necessarily, I don't know. Someone could define it differently. Sorry, what was the question?
I mean, like, what has it affected your university life studies?
Definitely, to some extent. First year, when towards Christmas, when all the coursework started building up, I think largely anxiety rather than depression was definitely in key. Like, the anxiety was just, but that's fairly natural. But I think I took it possibly over the point where it was too much.
I mean, obviously you're in first year last year. I mean, you hear a lot of people becoming homesick and things. I mean, that can have a drastic impact on you.
Definitely.
I mean, I know from personal experience, I got a bit homesick, and I was a bit anxious for a few months as well. I mean, can you relate to that at all?
Well, I think similar to bullying, there's a lot of triggers at university, and having first year, completely different situation. you're going to be on your own more. Like you're not going to have your family around you. Probably some people might. So
like support, yeah.
Yeah. It's a place where it's possible to get more depressed just because you're in a situation that's almost like volatile. Like if you're already unstable, it could totally throw you again. But the flip side of that, and sort of the positive side, which I'd rather focus on, obviously, is that you have no ties here, and there's so many opportunities here, and also just like the student support services, all these are free services that are set up for you and very easy to use. Like on the flip side of this being a very volatile place, you can also get possibly more help than at home, where you may be trapped in a certain place where you can't get out very easily. So but yeah, there's definitely a whole set of challenges. And if you have underlying issues like depression, that's going to be very, very difficult for you, but not necessarily impossible. You could completely change your life here at the same time.
I mean, you say about the student support services. I mean, we have some great services here.
Definitely.
I mean, do you have any experience with them? Do you have therapy at all?
Currently, no, but I did go along last year. But
so you took steps to get through it. Yeah.
I would say the majority of my depression, anxiety issues, it was like worse when I was younger. And at that point, I think I could have used that help then more than I did when I got it. But it was basically finally just went along and did it. Thought, I need to do this. I probably should just done this years ago. May as well do it now. Never too late to do it. And I think an issue that I'd definitely like to raise is that I had tried at home, like the NHS services, and probably here as well, because there isn't that many mental health professionals on hand. Like there's not as many as like physical health things. So generally there'll be massive waiting lists. So I'd encourage anyone to go along as soon as they can and like just not wait. And I'd love to see it people going for almost checkups or something. Just like people will go for like a physical problem so easily, but people just completely disregard mental health and its importance sometimes.
Yeah.
So like if you have any, like if you just kind of think you want to go, just go and do it. Like just go as a checkup kind of thing.
So would you say that mental health is definitely an illness then?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
But like, it is very, it's hard to define, I'd say.
What's your coping mechanism then with all?
So many. I think you can look at it as an overarching, like so many different things, but it'd be very hard for me to just choose one thing. And kind of getting over it was just a factor of all kinds of stuff. But like, I'd say just self-expression of any form, that's probably the major one. And I kind of saw the therapy in the end as like, I think the idea of therapy is to become your own therapist eventually. Any form of art, like writing, music, any of that, it can be even something like the gym. It doesn't have to be like a standard thing. Just whatever form of expression you want to do will help you so much, because like, you've got to get that out in a somewhat healthy way. Obviously some people choose unhealthy ways to express, because like that's just all they think they have, but finding it in a healthy expression is like absolutely vital, I think.
I mean, like you mentioned the gym and healthy lifestyle.
Yeah.
Do you partake in any sports? Do you exercise? I mean, because I hear that running is the best thing you can do, releasing those endorphins. I mean, I personally go to the gym and I feel so much better afterwards. And when I am down, I go to the gym and have a run, or I do a few sets on the bench machine or something, and it really helps to just get rid of that stress, doesn't it? I mean, like, so how do you recommend other people, sort of like, who are feeling depressed or anxious, get through it, or what steps can they take, like, in relation to your experience?
Well, most importantly, I'd say find something you want to do personally, because someone might absolutely despise running, but like with exercise, the only way I've been able to do it a lot is because I found something I like boxing.
Oh.
Just find something you enjoy that you're going to stick with, and it'll just be so much easier for you, because some people will say yes, just go to the gym and sign up, but if they're doing something they don't actually enjoy, it's almost like that it could be worse.
I mean, you're an English student, so I presume you do a lot of creative writing in your time.
Yeah.
So what do you invest yourself in that at all to release your inner emotions, kind of thing?
Definitely, and that's a hobby as much as it is also therapy. It's kind of been an overarching, one of the most important things I've done. But to say it got me out of it would be absurd. It was a whole collection of different things, and I wouldn't say I'm entirely out of it, but it can help absolutely immeasurably.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Are you still actively affected by this depression, anxiety? Or?
I'd say it's still there. It's just my coping mechanism is just completely different to how it used to be.
Yeah.
And that's where it's a weird thing. I could say that maybe I still have it as bad and I'm just way better at coping at it, but I would say it has reduced and I'm also better at coping at it. It's maybe both.
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, obviously we talked about, student support services and all these other organisations that help. Do you think that, these organisations or health services or the government even could do more to tackle the problem of anxiety, depression? I mean, as you say, it's a big problem. Illness is an illness, and it's not in the limelight as much as other illnesses.
I think it absolutely is more than it. I've never really focused on it as a kid that much. Obviously, I wasn't aware of the services until probably around the age of 13, 14.
Right.
And even then, I didn't actually go, as I've said earlier, I didn't really go until the age of 18. I needed it more then. So I think if it was more prevalent, and maybe it was just easier and more people were more encouraged to go and seek it, like therapy. It's not necessarily when it's awful, but like when things are building, you should go as a preventative measure almost. I'd say that still probably isn't enough, but I can't really criticise how it's dealt with. It's dealt with well. You just need more of it, I think. The fact that the waiting list is so massive and that it's known as a very common issue. I don't know what the statistic is, but it's big. And I'm sure there's many people out there that are dealing with it, won't admit it to themselves or other people and just not getting help. But if there was more help available and there was more of a culture of just, it's like obvious you should go and get checked out.
I mean, there's obviously, that leads back to the whole thing with the stigma of it all. I mean, people think, this is just something that people won't accept me for, kind of ostracise them, So I mean, that is, that's the main problem, really, isn't it? That they won't get help.
I suppose, yeah. But I think absolute massive part of it for me was when I was prepared to admit it to myself was absolutely huge. That everything wasn't okay. That was amazing, and that's like a massive weight dropped. I don't think until that point you can't really fix yourself in any way. You have to admit it. That's like the first step, as cliche as that. It's often said, but admitting it to other people just seems like an extension of that. Like it's just if you're like the principle of honesty, if you can take it all the way, you just wouldn't deny the information. Like maybe not, you wouldn't go around necessarily just volunteering the information, just like shouting it around, but. I think if someone that cares about you and you care about asks you if you're fine and you say that you are and you know that you're not, that's like, it's devastating. You're just reinforcing this thing inside of you, whereas if you just admitted it, then that's like the first step to getting better, hopefully.
So you had trouble admitting it then, did you?
I think, the power of denial is absolutely insane, and I denied it for a long time. That's why it lasted so long, I think.
Not getting help, the help you needed at the time, you needed it the most,
That's the thing, I think definitely had social anxiety as well. That was a large part of it. It's just one of the things that are sort of thrown into the mix. They tend to come in groups, it seems. So expressing it like that was just very difficult. And if you have social anxiety as well, it's going to be harder to go and talk to someone about it.
Definitely.
So it's kind of a catch-22. But you eventually just have to put yourself out there, be vulnerable, accept that it's pretty terrifying, but it's just necessary.
You can get through it, I mean, obviously there's going to be a lot of students, potentially watching this interview. I mean, do you have anything to say to them, to kind of like help them,
I don't know about personal things, but the general thing I would say is that selfishness isn't necessarily a dirty word, and that if you're not okay, you've got to be a bit selfish and look after yourself, and that it's hard to compare yourself to other people. In fact, it's almost pointless, because that if someone else is depressed, that's also tragic, and you should encourage them to also go get help. But like, just zone in on yourself and focus on yourself. Like, because it's just going to affect everything you do. It's going to be affecting every decision you make. But the thing is, this is a place with just really, really easy support, and they're not going to judge you there at all. So it's just, there's no reason not to get help here. But the thing is, because it's depression and it's so, one of the overarching things is just an utter apathy, lack of motivation. Feels like there's absolutely no hope or no reason to do anything. It is obviously very hard to motivate that person to go and do something. And I think with friends that might worry about a friend that they think might be depressed, you can't force them to go and get help. It's their decision ultimately, but you can be encouraging in a certain way. You can like incept them, just drop the idea that you're available. I think if you're a friend, just make a point that you are available, and book the appointment for them if they want you to, and go with them maybe. Just be as encouraging as you can, but don't force them, because it's their decision to get better. It is their life. That's the whole point. It's kind of their responsibility to some extent. Like, things may happen externally that might trigger their depression, but how they deal with it is their thing.
Yeah.